The federal purchasing log slipped past the news cycle like a ghost, yet it spells out enough firepower to level cities. One line at MacDill Air Force Base records a $750 million indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity deal for unique ammunition. Another line from the same office pegs the total projected delivery at more than 800 million rounds. So, what the hell's happening? In this video, we'll talk about how U.S. Special Operations Command slid those figures under the radar, what the public documents on sam.gov actually say, why the calibers involved don't fit any ordinary training model, and what it all means for anyone who still trusts Washington when it swears everything is fine. I spent the last week combing through the Statement of Work labeled CUI for the SOCOM Unique Munitions Requirement, SUMR for short, along with Attachment 2 Exhibit A and the associated solicitation, H924-0323R00002. None of this material is classified, so you can pull it straight off sam.gov, yet almost no one outside the contracting world seems to have bothered. The scope section admits up front that SOCOM is fielding next-generation weapons with significantly increased capabilities, compared with standard-issue service rifles and machine guns. Because the regular single manager for conventional munitions can't handle that exotic diet, SOCOM went shopping on its own, setting up a 10-year pipeline capable of ordering whatever round its armorers dream up. Commercial off-the-shelf, modified commercial, or completely bespoke loads built from a government technical data package. The price ceiling? $750 million spread across 10 one-year ordering periods. The contract lists more than 30 distinct cartridges. Some are familiar. 9mm 147 grain subsonic, perfect for suppressed pistols and pistol caliber carbines. 50 caliber short-range training ammunition linked in M1183 belts, handy for turret drills without sending full-power rounds downrange. Most of the lineup, though, feels like a quartermaster's fever dream. There's 300 Blackout, both supersonic and subsonic, 260 Remington loaded with 135 grain Hornady A-tips and 142 grain AccuBond Hunters, 338 Norma Magnum ball at 245 grains and linked XM1214 multi-purpose rounds tipping the scale at 272 grains, plus a 375 ESSO 407 grain monster for a platform that hasn't even been revealed to the public. A separate column carries 6.5 Creedmoor entries at 103, 137, and SMCC weights, the latter shorthand for a low-flash combat-configured match cartridge. Then come the exotics, 5.56mm, 70 grain Barnes TSX barrier rounds, two different 62 grain Barnes RRLP green tip lead-free loads, 9mm reactive breaching rounds meant to punch lock hasps without sending splinters everywhere, and a pair of stunner cartridges in 22 and 25 caliber, colored blue to indicate non-lethal or animal control duty. Someone even added blank and ball combat loads for 7.62 by 39, a caliber you won't find in a standard U.S. armory, but that comes in handy when American teams need to blend into a region where AKs rule the night. Every one of those designations appears beside the word TBD in the quantity column, because the point of an IDIQ isn't to fill empty bins the day the contract signs. It's to let SOCOM place rapid task orders the instant an operational plan requires ammo that isn't available through legacy depots. The Statement of Work demands first article acceptance tests for anything not already certified, full lot. Acceptance tests for every production run, electronic pressure velocity and action time data for ballistics nerds to pore over, terminal ballistics gel blocks for lethal effect modeling, and an energetic material qualification sequence complete with drop tests, burn tests, and radar tracks. That is the kind of paperwork you commission when the round in question might have to pass through a bad guy's engine block, ricochet off a wall without harming a hostage, or whisper through a suppressor from a carbine at 2 in the morning. So, how do we reach the headline figure of 800 million rounds? Start with simple math. Even mainstream duty ammo like Speer Gold G2, 147 grain 9mm, goes for about 50 cents per round on federal bulk contracts. Boutique barrier, blind 5.56 Barnes loads can push 80 cents. Linked 338, Norma Magnum at 272 grains, and custom brass brakes $1.20 every time you squeeze the trigger. Using real contract prices pulled from prior DHS and Navy buys, Speer's 120 million round DHS award at roughly 51 cents. Federal's 223 Remington duty contract that averaged 60 cents. An average blended cost of 94 cents a shot for this SOCOM mix looks conservative. Divide $750 million by 94 cents, and you land at just under 800 million cartridges, give or take a few pallets or a batch of expensive sniper fodder. Some skeptics argue that part of the ceiling will fund research and development, not just cartridges on pallets. Fair point, but the SOW carves out separate line items for R&D, meaning most of the spending ceiling still converts to brass and copper. Even 500 million rounds, if you dial the cost per shot up to $1.50 to account for the really weird stuff, is mind-boggling for a command the size of SOCOM. At any given time, Special Operations Forces number may be 70,000 worldwide, counting every operator and support billet. Spread 800 million rounds across that headcount, and you end up with more than 11,000 rounds per person. And we're not talking bulk M855 ball. We're talking subsonic 300 Blackout meant for suppressed carbines clearing doorways, linked 338 NM belts for anti-materiel rifles, and high BC-65 Creedmoor loads dialed for 2,000-yard hits. Range fodder, this is not. The delivery destination stamped on Exhibit A drives the point home. All ammunition ships to Bluegrass Army Depot in Richmond, Kentucky. That site handles chemical munitions demilitarization, bulk storage, and rapid transloading. Rail spurs and multi-lane highways feed the compound. SOCOM can preload shipping containers with any mix of rounds, slap a movement order on them, and hit any port or airbase inside the continental U.S. in about a day. Think of Bluegrass as a middle-mile Amazon warehouse, except the packages aren't coffee makers. They're tailored cartridges sitting under controlled unclassified lock and key until the day in '05 at Tampa sends a coded spreadsheet to the depot. I can already hear the official talking points. This is routine procurement for training and testing. Let's test that claim ourselves. Start with the 9mm breaching cartridge, catalog code X103. A reactive projectile designed to shatter hinges without fragging hostages isn't something you use for square-range marksmanship. Then, look at the .25 caliber stunner round, ZC02 in the exhibit. That's a tool for rendering livestock unconscious before slaughter. Why would SOCOM book a line item for a slaughterhouse cartridge? Simple. Field expedient breaching. Stunner loads convert to door poppers and distraction devices once you tweak the powder and the projectile shape. Add in the 50 caliber SRTA M1183 belt, a reduced velocity training round that mimics recoil while dropping range safety distances to a fraction of full power ball, and you see SOCOM planning to rehearse with ammo that behaves like operational loads in close quarters without burning through the real thing. Now fold in the barrier-ready Barnes TSX 70-grain 5.56 and the Barnes RRLP gray-tip lead-free rounds. Both cost double what plain old M85501 green tip does, yet each addresses a unique problem. TSX bullets stay together through auto glass and interior walls. RRLP disintegrates on concrete, minimizing ricochet in tight alleys. One fights through cover, the other protects non-combatants in the next room. When procurement bundles them inside the same indefinite delivery contract, you get a menu for whichever scenario the mission presents. Remember, too, the 6.5 Creedmoor lines. One entry calls for a 103-grain MP code for multi-purpose, while another specifies 137-grain open tip. SOCOM adopted 6.5 CM for its MK20 SSR upgrade path because the cartridge retains supersonic velocity past 1,000 yards, perfect for mountainous or Arctic engagements where 7.62 NATO tumbles off. Linked 6.5. Creedmoor 103 grain means belt-fed conversion kits for platforms like the FN MK46/MK48 or the SIG lightweight machine gun. Those belts cost north of $1 each shot. If only 10% of the ceiling goes toward linked Creedmoor, that's still $75 million, roughly 60 million linked rounds, enough to fight a battalion-level war for a decade. Critics will ask, couldn't SOCOM simply be testing ammunition for potential adoption, buying small sample lots? The SOW crushes that argument. It orders vendors to barcode every unit pack, every intermediate pack, every shipping crate, and generate full ammunition lot numbers in accordance with MILSTD-11-68. You don't set up that much traceability for a few test lots. You only go through the tedium when you know serial shipments will follow. The same SOW mandates a first article test within 120 days of each contract's activation and forbids any production lot from leaving the plant until government inspectors bless the results. Again, that is not a one-off evaluation. That is a production pipeline with quality gates and acceptance criteria engineered for sustained flow. Let's zoom back to the raw numbers. Take the subsonic 300 Blackout, 201 grain load, code X250. A high-mass projectile in brass-cased ammo often sits at 90 cents to $1.04 on previous government deals. Even if SOCOM only orders 1 million rounds in the first year, that's another $1 million out the door. Add the 110 grain TTSX tactical tip and its 110 grain RRLP companion, both priced similarly. The 26-foot lockers of 300 Blackout you just moved to Bluegrass become 3 discrete war stocks, one for suppressed carbines on kinetic raids, one for barrier penetration, and one for urban rooms where ricochet risk trumps terminal performance. Multiply that by 10 years and watch the receipts climb into the billions if every option on the IDIQ exercises. If this were purely about training, SOCOM could have written one blanket purchase agreement for M855A1 ball, MK318 Mod 0 SOST, linked M8001, and bulk 9mm FMJ, then piggybacked the Army's Joint Munitions Command bids. That would have cost pennies compared with a bespoke contract that micromanages grain weights, jacket materials, and projectile tip colors. The fact they did not piggyback tells us the standard inventory fails to meet an operational need. The fact they layered R&D and data rights inside a supposedly commercial procurement tells us new weapon platforms, maybe integrally suppressed carbines in intermediate calibers or belt-fed reciprocating barrel rifles, sit in the wings and require dedicated diets. The fact they sought a 10-year ordering window tells us this isn't a stopgap, but a permanent shift. So, what missions could warrant such an arsenal? You don't string subsonic 300 BLK over penetration mitigated loads, 9mm breaching rounds, and 5.56 RRLP on the same manifest unless the target area mixes tight urban interiors with fleeting outdoor threats. Think hostage rescue in concrete apartment towers where over-penetration equals civilian casualties. Think maritime interdiction on supertankers where one spark near vapor holds means game over. Think cross-border raids where plausible deniability demands ammo that leaves no friendly brass trail. None of those scenarios requires millions of rounds, yet SUMAR ceiling funds exactly that. Consider the domestic angle. The Department of Homeland Security in 2018 granted SPEAR a contract for up to 120 million gold dot, 124 grain, plus P9mm rounds payable over 5 years. The Army recently announced $1.5 billion to expand 155mm artillery production. The IRS, according to Open the Books, has spent $10 million on weapons, ammo, and gear since 2020, including 5 million rounds in its criminal investigation stockpile alone. You can treat those figures as isolated until you notice each purchase fills a different tactical niche. DHS buys pistol rounds for close-in enforcement, the IRS buys ammo for felony raids, the Army expands heavy shell output, and SOCOM loads stealth precision rounds for surgical hits. The mosaic looks like the bureaucracy hedging every possible contingency, from riot control to peer-state standoff to cross-border asymmetry. Critics will also point at the delivery timetable. 10 years for the SUMR IDIQ might just cover routine restocking. Yet the SOW lets SOCOM issue delivery orders that demand product inside 60 days. That clause alone proves the command wants a just-in-time network, not a leisurely backfill. If a crisis pops, they can call a vendor, trigger price lines, and land pallets at Bluegrass before CNN runs the first live hit. You don't build that capacity for a maybe. You build it because you foresee rapid demand spikes. Now, before someone claims paranoia, remember that inflation and commodity swings do push procurement ceilings sky high. Brass costs more, primers cost more, lead is heavily regulated, copper sits at record numbers. But price hikes can't explain the caliber diversity. Brass cost doesn't make the military dabble in 260 Remington. Mission demands do. Commodity fluctuation doesn't force the government to buy 7.62 by 39 blanks. Deception operations do. You only order reactive breaching 9mm when you plan to blow locks without C4 noise. Let's ride the numbers one more time. At a modest 95 cents average, 800 million rounds equates to 4% of the world's annual commercial small arms cartridge output. SOCOM alone is locking up that slice. Civilian shooters whined in 2020 when Walmart decided to reduce 5.56 shelf space. Imagine the price jump when niche bullet suppliers divert every gray tip RRLP run to federal pallets. If you think store shelves look thin now, wait for year 5 of SUMR when every Barnes factory lane runs copper-solid TSX for Tampa contracts, not hunting loads. Of course, the documents we read include disclaimers, quantities subject to change, no promise to buy full ceiling, performance period may extend, and so on. Bureaucrats love hedges. Yet the statement of work's first paragraph spells it out. SOCOM wants a constant chain of supply for the most lethal capability on the battlefield. Not a reserve, not a trial batch, a chain of supply. One final clue hides in the security section. The SOW labels the effort unclassified, yet still slaps controlled unclassified information restrictions on every page. That halfway house means the government admits the material doesn't compromise national security if it leaks. But it sure would embarrass policymakers who'd rather not debate why Bluegrass Army Depot needs pallets of 62-grain gray tip 5.56 designed to disintegrate on concrete. Controlled dissemination tells me they expect public blowback. So what do we, the people, do with this knowledge? First, stay alert. When procurement patterns shift from bulk ball to boutique loads, operational doctrine has already shifted. Second, diversify personal inventories. The market may see higher demand for calibers like 6.5 Creedmoor, 300 Blackout, and barrier-blind 5.56 derivatives. Stock before panic sets in. And third, follow the paperwork. SAM.gov posts everything if you dig. Each new line item reveals another piece of the mission profile, another hint at where Washington thinks the next real fight erupts. Ignore politicians' speeches, watch the requisition numbers. Sadly, that's all the time we have for today. So, what do you think? Does this ammo mountain signal foreign intervention? Is it for domestic contingency? Or maybe it's just another cash burn bureaucratic boondoggle? Does the presence of stunner loads and 7.62 by 39 blanks point to psychological ops at home or partner force training abroad? Have you already shifted your own ammo buys in case civilian supply dries up once these deliveries ramp? Drop your take down below, because iron sharpens iron, and we need every sharp mind weighing in before another $1 billion in hush-hush ammunition slips through oversight. Smash that like button so the algorithm stops burying stories mainstream outlets ignore. Share this deep dive with the folks who still think ammo shortages are random. And subscribe with notifications on because we'll keep tracing the federal paper trail wherever it leads.